Seraphina Cole had loved Adrian Voss the way some people tend to garden in the shade, faithfully, hopefully, even when nothing much grew back. They had met at 24, at a crowded Friday evening gallery opening where the wine was cheap and the conversation was not. She had been standing in front of a large oil painting, a woman sitting alone at a kitchen table, hands folded, looking at nothing, when he walked up beside her and said, "She looks like she's been waiting a long time." Seraphina had turned to look at him. He was tall and sharp-jawed, with the kind of confidence that filled a room without asking permission. "Maybe she's just thinking," Seraphina said. "People who are just thinking don't look that tired," he replied. She had laughed, he had smiled. And that, as far as she could later trace it, was where it began. Adrian was brilliant in the way that swallows everything around it. He had built a small logistics company into something formidable by 30, and by 35, his name appeared in business columns with the regularity of a weather report. He moved fast, decided quickly, and had very little patience for anything that couldn't be measured. Seraphina taught art to middle schoolers, spent her weekends painting, and believed deeply in the kind of things that couldn't be measured at all. She told herself those differences were what made them work. For a while, they did work, or something that looked like working. He was charming when he was present. He remembered how she took her coffee. He once drove 40 minutes in the rain to bring her medication when she had the flu, and she held on to that memory for years, turning it over in quiet moments like a smooth stone in her pocket. But presence, she learned slowly, was not the same as attention, and attention was not the same as love. The forgetting began so gradually that she didn't recognize it as a pattern until the pattern was already woven through the whole fabric of their life together. A birthday acknowledged 2 days late with a bouquet that felt like an afterthought. A dinner reservation she had made carefully, canceled by a text message 40 minutes before. Conversations in which he nodded while reading something on his phone, and when she tested him once, stopped mid-sentence and said nothing, he nodded again. He had not heard a single word. She did not make a scene. That was not her nature. She absorbed it, adjusted, and quietly made herself smaller to fill less of the space he wasn't giving her. Her painting suffered first. She had always meant to build toward something, a proper showing, a small gallery of her own one day. But the hours she might have spent on it were spent instead on being available. Available for his moods, his schedule, the particular emotional weather of a man who never once asked about hers. Her friendships thinned next. It wasn't that he discouraged them, he simply didn't encourage them, and Seraphina had a habit of centering her life around whatever mattered most to the person she loved. She called her best friend Diane, less and less. When Diane finally said, plainly and without cruelty, "Sarah, I feel like I only hear from you when things are bad," Seraphina cried in her car for 20 minutes, and then drove home and made Adrian's favorite pasta for dinner. 15 years passed, the way long winters do, not dramatically, but thoroughly. On the evening of their 15th anniversary, Seraphina set the table with care. She used the good dishes, the ones they only brought out for occasions, and lit 2 candles that smelled of cedar and something warm. She had made a reservation at the restaurant where they'd had their first proper date, and then canceled it when she sensed the week had been heavy for him, choosing instead to cook at home. She had made his favorite things. She had opened a bottle of wine he liked. She waited. At 7:30 she texted him. At 8 she called. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Hey, I'm stuck at the office," he said. She could hear keyboards in the background, other voices. "The Henderson contract is a mess. I'm not going to make it tonight." Seraphina stood in her kitchen with a wooden spoon in her hand and looked at the 2 lit candles. "Adrian," she said quietly, "do you know what today is?" A pause. "Tuesday?" She closed her eyes. "It's our anniversary." Another pause, shorter this time. "Sarah, I'm sorry. I'll make it up to you this weekend. I promise. Things are just—" "It's fine," she said. "Don't worry about it." She hung up, blew out the candles, and sat down alone at the table she had set for 2. The food was good. The wine was good. The quiet was enormous. She did not cry. She looked at the empty chair across from her, and then she looked at her own reflection in the dark window behind it. A woman at a table, hands folded, looking at nothing, and something in her chest went very still. She thought of the painting from the gallery. The one where it had all started. She had always assumed the woman in the painting was waiting for someone to arrive. Sitting there at that table, 15 years older than the girl who had laughed at a stranger's joke about tired eyes, Seraphina wondered for the first time if the woman in the painting had simply stopped. Not waiting. Done. When Adrian came home at 11, she was still at the table with a cup of tea she had let go cold. He came into the kitchen, loosened his tie, and opened the fridge. "There's food," she said, and he made himself a plate and sat across from her, and that was when she said it. Not with anger, because the anger had burned off hours ago, leaving something much clearer behind it. "I've been invisible to you for a very long time," she said, "and I think you are kind enough that if I asked you to see me, you would try. But I don't think trying is enough anymore. I think we have become two people who share a space, and very little else. And I think I have given so much of myself to this, that I have almost disappeared." Adrian set down his fork. He looked at her, really looked, in the way he almost never did, and she could see from his expression that he was parsing what she had said, looking for the argument, the place where she was wrong. "Sarah," he said, "I know I've been distracted lately, but—" "Not lately," she said gently. "For a long time. I'm not angry. I just want you to understand what I'm telling you." "What are you telling me?" "That I'm going to leave," she said. "Not tonight, but soon." He stared at her. "You're serious?" "Yes." "Over a missed anniversary?" She looked at him with something that wasn't quite sadness and wasn't quite pity. "Over 15 of them," she said. She did not leave in a rush. That was not her way. She spent 3 weeks in the quiet work of dismantling a shared life, calling her sister in Edinburgh, speaking to a counselor named Margaret, who had kind eyes, and asked her how long she'd felt this way, and Seraphina said, "Longer than I admitted," and Margaret nodded like she had expected that answer. She found an apartment across the city, 2nd floor, good light, a large window that faced east. On a Sunday morning in November, with pale sun coming through the kitchen blinds, she told Adrian she had found a place. She had already moved most of her things in small, quiet trips over the preceding days. He hadn't noticed. "You actually did it," he said. He looked stunned in the particular way of someone who has been warned about a thing and still can't believe it has arrived. "Yes," she said. "Sarah." He put his hands flat on the table. "Tell me what you need. Tell me what to do differently. I'll do it." She looked at him for a moment. There was something genuinely pained in his face, and she did not doubt that he meant it. But she had learned, at great expense, the difference between what a person means in a moment of crisis and what they carry into the ordinary days that follow. "I think," she said carefully, "that you are saying that because losing me feels real right now, and I believe you. But I've heard versions of this before, and the days that came after them were the same days as before." She picked up her bag. She had 1 box left by the door. "You were my whole life for 15 years, she said. "I hope you find what makes you happy." "I really do." She hugged him, briefly, gently, and then she picked up the box, and she walked out, and she did not look back at the door. The first weeks in the new apartment were strange, in the way that honest things sometimes are. Seraphina had forgotten what her own quiet felt like, as opposed to the quiet of waiting for someone to come home. This was different. This was hers. She unpacked slowly, putting things where she wanted them, without consulting anyone. She hung her own paintings on the walls. She called Diane, who came over with Thai food and a bottle of wine, and sat on the floor with her, because there wasn't much furniture yet, and they talked until midnight, and at one point, Seraphina laughed so hard she spilled her wine, and it was the most like herself she had felt in years. She started painting again, not for any particular purpose at first, just because the east-facing window was extraordinary in the early morning, and she had nowhere she needed to be. She went back to Margaret every 2 weeks. She learned to sit with her own feelings instead of immediately organizing them around someone else's needs. It was harder than she expected, and more important than she had known. Adrian called. A lot, at first. She answered once, about a month after she left, because she didn't believe in cruelty, and she thought she owed him that. "I've been thinking," he said. His voice was different, quieter. "I know," she said. "I didn't see you," he said. "I mean, I didn't. I took you for granted, for a long time. Yes, she said. I'm sorry, Sarah. I know you are, she said. And she meant it. She could hear it in him. Something cracked open. Something real. I hope that stays with you. Not because of me. Because you deserve to understand yourself better. She paused. Take care of yourself, Adrian. After that, she let his calls go to voicemail. Not out of coldness, but out of self-preservation. She knew herself well enough by now to know that she was still capable of walking back through a door she had worked very hard to close. 6 months after she left, she had her first small showing, 12 paintings in a borrowed gallery space on a Wednesday evening in May. Diane helped her hang them. Her sister flew in from Edinburgh. Her students made her a card with 63 signatures on it. Adrian came. She hadn't invited him, but she hadn't not invited him either, and she wasn't entirely surprised when she looked up from a conversation and saw him near the back, holding a glass of water, looking at the paintings. She excused herself from the conversation and walked over. You came, she said. I hope that's all right, he said. He looked at the painting closest to him, a woman at an east-facing window, morning light on her shoulders, a cup of tea in her hands, and an expression that was not happiness exactly, but something quieter and more durable. This one is new. Finished it last month. He looked at it for a long moment. She looks like herself, he said. Yes, Seraphina said. She does. He looked at her then, and she could see everything he wanted to say arranged behind his eyes. The apologies, the what-ifs, the possibility he was still turning over. She felt no bitterness toward it. She felt, if anything, a distant tenderness. He was trying to understand things he should have understood years ago, and that was not nothing. It was just not enough to rebuild on. Your work is beautiful, he said finally. Thank you. Are you happy? She considered the question honestly, the way she had learned to consider things since leaving. I'm becoming happy, she said, which is more real than the other kind. He nodded slowly. He set down his glass of water, thanked her for the evening, and left. She watched him go and felt, to her own quiet surprise, nothing but peace. A year after the night of the candles and the cold tea and the woman in the window, Seraphina stood in her studio on an early Saturday morning, brush in hand, light coming in gold, and clean across the floor. She was working on something large, larger than she'd attempted in years, and she had no deadline, and no one waiting for her, and a full, unhurried day ahead. She thought, briefly, of the painting from the gallery where she and Adrian had first spoken, the woman at the table with the tired eyes. Seraphina had always assumed that painting was about waiting. Standing in her own light, she understood now that it was about something else entirely. It was about the moment before a woman decides, the last quiet breath before she chooses herself. She turned back to the canvas and kept painting.